Hello everyone, welcome to discussion sessions on official mock exams issued by ACCA for March 2025 exam attempt for Advanced Audit and Assurance Level exam. I hope you all remember that in our previous class we discussed question number 1 of this official mock exam. In our today's class, we will be moving forward and we will be looking at question number 2 of this official mock exam, in which our approach will remain the same. We will first read the introduction of the question, the basic information, the exhibits, and the requirement tab. And then we will be actually drafting the answer of this question number 2 in our today's class. See, it is very important that towards the end of the preparation of your examination, you do practice these complete exam papers. It gives you an idea that how you have to manage all of the topics together in your actual examination, and it also improves your time management skill. In these past paper revision sessions, as you all know that we will be discussing 10 complete attempt exam papers so that you can have an idea that how you have to actually deal with the examination. In our today's class, we will be looking at this question number 2. Now, this question number 2 of March 2025 mock exam is the same question as it was the mock exam question of September 24 exam attempt, which I have already discussed with my students. So now what I will be doing is that I will be connecting this class with my September 24 mock exam discussion, in which I have discussed this question. So now when we will be discussing it, here it will be written as September 24 mock exam. But you don't have to worry, because that question, Soba and Company, is the same question in March 25 mock exam, and it is the same question repeated in the September 24 mock. So it will be the same question discussion. I've discussed the question in detail along with the drafting of answer. So now we will be connecting with that class, and it will be a very detailed discussion. You all know that if you have any query, you can always connect with me directly on my WhatsApp number. Okay, so now let's move towards the detailed discussion of this question. Okay, I want you all to listen to me with patience and concentration. Let's start. All to listen to me very carefully. It is 1st July 20x5 and you are a manager in the forensic department of your firm, Soba and Company. You have recently received requests from two companies, Udon Company and Ramen Company. Udon Company is a corporate finance client of Soba and Company, but not an audit client of the firm. You are also provided with the details of potential fraud which has occurred at Ramen Company. Ramen Company is not an existing client of your firm. See, this is just an introduction screen of the question where the examiner introduces you with the firm and the basic detail about the clients. And he also briefs you about the expectation examiner holds from this question. Okay. Now, the following exhibits available on the left hand side of the screen provides information relevant to the question. Exhibit 1 is Udon Company. Details about the request for the service from Udon Company in relation to an insurance claim. Exhibit 2 is Ramen Company. Details of a potential fraud provided by Seth Williams, the financial controller. This information should be used to answer the question requirements within the response option. Now, at advanced audit and assurance level, normally the response option is a word processor document in which you have to type the complete answer. So as we will be drafting this answer, we'll use this word processor document, and you will have an idea that how you have to actually use these tools. See, it's very important that before going for the actual examination, you practice the tools available so that you can have an understanding that how you will use these different options, different functionalities in your actual examination. So now let's look at exhibit 1, which is Udon Company. Soba and Company's specialist forensic department carries out a wide range of forensic engagements and investigations, including commercial disputes, negligence cases, and insurance claims. Udon Company is a fashion designer and manufacturer with fast-moving inventory in line with seasonal clothing sales. 2 months ago, one of the Udon Company largest distribution center suffered a severe flood, destroying the entire inventory.
The company has a comprehensive insurance, and the insurance company has already agreed a settlement with Udon Company for the damage to the building, fixtures, and fittings. However, there is an outstanding claim for the business interruption. So basically, this question is in relation to forensic investigation, where our firm Soba and Company has a specialist forensic department, and we deals with situations of commercial dispute, negligence, and insurance claims. Now, one of the client, Udon Company, has suffered from a severe flooding. Now, insurance company has agreed for their claim for the damage to the building, fixtures, and fittings. But for the business interruption, like during the repair process, the business will be interrupted. So for that insurance claim, this forensic activity is required. Unlike building and tangible asset insurance, which only covers physical damage, business interruption exists to cover the income a business would have received had the incident not happened. Udon Company require a forensic specialist to provide assurance on the financial impact of the Udon Company's loss of profits due to the flood as calculated by the finance director. The finance director of Udon Company is keen to appoint a forensic specialist as soon as possible to support Udon Company's claim. He is proposing a 50% bonus to be paid to Soba and Company in addition to the fees if the forensic assurance work on the insurance claim is completed within 2 weeks. So apparently, this question is about factors to consider about accepting the engagement, as we are reading that they are offering us an incentive to complete the work early. It's a forensic investigation question where our firm will have to provide assurance on the loss calculation made by the finance director in relation to the lost income. Okay, so this is exhibit 1 in relation to Udon Company. Then exhibit 2 is Ramin Company. See, you are reading the question for the first time. And when you read the question for the first time, it is very much essential that you read it with patience and concentration. Don't jump to any conclusion that the question is difficult or easy. Every question is easy if you approach it in a better manner. You try and connect to the scenario. Okay, let's look at Exhibit 2 also, Ramin Company. You have been contacted by Seth Williams, the financial controller of Ramin Company. Seth is concerned about the number of recent transactions and would like to engage your firm to investigate a potential fraud. Ramin Company is not currently a client of your firm. To Office and Soba Company from Seth Williams, date 1st July 20X5. I have contacted you concerning some discrepancies here at Ramin Company. A piece of land was sold for $2.8 million in April 20X5. However, during a recent review of Ramin Company's bank statement, I saw two entries relating to this transaction. A receipt of $2.6 million and a further 200,000 received in the same week, which was immediately transferred to an unidentified bank account with the reference consultancy next to it. So apparently the land which was sold for 2.8 million, 2.6 million, one transaction, other transaction of 200,000, and then that was transferred further. So as a forensic auditor, we have to investigate this transaction. In a separate transaction, the use of warehouse owned by Ramin Company was leased to a storage company. After inspecting the lease agreement, I discovered that the agreed monthly lease term was for $10,000 plus an additional $1,500 per month management fees. The $10,000 monthly lease payment have been traced to Ramin Company bank account. However, I was unable to trace the management fees of $1,500. When I questioned Bess Bell, the finance director, she said it was paid into the company's other bank account. All the documentation relating to this other bank account is held by Bess Bell. Additional bank accounts can only be opened with the formal approval of myself and one of the non-executive director. The finance director claims that the additional bank account had been established many years ago. However, several other members of the management team have also confirmed that they also have no knowledge of this additional bank account. Given the nature of the concerns, I would like your firm to perform the forensic investigation as quickly and discreetly as possible. Kind regards. So, one is an issue of $200,000 which were transferred to some other bank account, and then this issue of $1,500 per month management fees, which is also going in some unidentified bank account, which is being managed by Best Bell, the finance director. We have to perform the forensic investigation activity. Let's look at the requirements that what he's asking here. Okay. See, we have just read the question. Now we look at each of the requirement and think about it in more detail. Part A. Discuss how the requirements of ISQM1, quality management for firms that perform the audit or review of financial statement or other assurance or related service engagement, should improve audit quality and help to restore public trust in the audit profession. Your answer should focus on the following two areas: acceptance and continuance of the client, and firm-wide culture and system of quality management. You do not need to refer in exhibit when answering this question. So basically, this is a pure knowledge-based requirement, and that is in relation to ISQM1, International Standard of Quality Management, which talks about firm-wide control. System of quality management need to be developed in the firm. Okay, if you remember this ISQM1, it is one of the technical article. See, what the student says that, sir, how a technical article can be examined. This is how it can be examined. And in our classes, we had a complete lecture on this ISQM1. Okay, if someone do not remember, and if you're taking my classes, then you can simply go to the learning management system and refer it. And if you're not taking the classes and you want to just revise it on your own, you can simply go to the ACCA website. First, you'll go on to Google, go on technical articles for advanced audit and assurance, and here you go, you can find a complete technical article in relation to international standards on quality management, this ISQM. And within this ISQM, you can look at these underlying principle. Within that, there is SOQM, the system of quality management. And within the SOQM, there is a point in relation to the acceptance and continuation of the client relationship. So if you have understood this technical article and you remember its points, it would be an easy requirement of 6 marks. So it is very much important that you have studied these technical articles. And for my students, I have recorded a separate lecture on each of the technical article. On each and every one of the article, we have a lecture of 1 hour each. Like for every article, we have a lecture. So if you have watched my lectures, if you are my enrolled student, this question would be just a piece of cake. Like easy 6 marks. Because your good luck was that you were studying from a tutor who has taught all of the articles to you. I didn't say to read it on your own. If you are my student, you have a complete lecture available on that. If you're forgetting, you can just go to technical articles, the complete section in my LMS where I've discussed each of the article. So, a very easy 6 marks requirement. When we'll be answering it, we'll just take a quick review about the points in relation to acceptance and continuation of client engagement and firm-wide culture and system of quality management. It was a simple rote learning requirement, which is the part A. Okay, so the question is Soba and Company. Okay, and this is the first requirement for 6 marks which we have to attempt, that we have to discuss the requirements of ISQM 1 in relation to the following key areas: acceptance and continuation of client engagement and firm-wide culture. Just a second. So this is the first requirement which you have to attempt. Now, so we'll be looking at it when we'll be developing the answer. Then part B, using information in Exhibit 1, evaluate the professional and ethical matters which should be considered before Soba and Company accepts the forensic assignment for Odo and Company. 8 marks. So that's relating to Exhibit 1. We have to discuss the points to consider before accepting its engagement. And then part B is using the information in Exhibit 2, assuming that Soba and Company accepts the engagement, recommend the investigation procedures which should be performed in relation to the matters. So for 6 marks, we have to discuss procedures. So part A was a general rote learning requirement. Part B was factors to consider before accepting the engagement, and part C is procedure. 6 plus 8 plus 6, these are the 20 marks. And then 5 marks are in relation to professional skills for analysis, like analyzing the rules and concepts in detail, like when you analyze the ISQM1. Evaluation, relating it to the scenario, like when you are discussing the factors to consider, you relate it to the scenario. Professional skepticism, that wherever you can question anything, where you need to question the management, raise a concern. Judgment, your skill to take a judgment that okay, this is right and this is wrong. And commercial acumen in your answer, your ability to evaluate and represent your practical approach. Like while discussing the factors to consider before engagement, you need to demonstrate the commercial acumen that, okay, if we are accepting the engagement, we need to have sufficient resources. And if we don't have the sufficient resources, we should avoid the engagement because it would otherwise lead to legal consequences. Like if we accept the engagement and don't deliver it on time, it will lead to legal claims. So that is something your long-term perspective and commercial acumen approach. So it's not a separate requirement. You need to demonstrate these professional skills while you're attempting these three requirements, Part A, Part B, and Part C. Okay, so now let's look at each of the requirement in detail. First of all, we'll talk about this requirement of ISQM1 in relation to acceptance and continuation of client engagement, firm-wide culture, and system of quality management. Let's discuss some points and draft its answer. It's a 6 marks requirement, so it will be 1 mark each for every comment which you develop. Okay, let's look at it. Okay, so now when we talk about ISQM1, first we have to discuss the requirements of ISQM1 for firms that perform audit or review of financial statement or other assurance or related service engagement should improve audit quality and help to restore public trust in the audit profession. So, what ISQM1 is about? So, ISQM1 is about creating a system throughout the firm which will make sure that all the engagements performed by the firm are performed with a high level of quality. See, there is one ISQM1 which is for firm level quality management, and then there is ISQM2 which is engagement specific quality things. So, currently, here we have to talk about the ISQM1. And then we have to discuss about acceptance and continuation of the client engagement. ISQM1 says that a firm should make sure that it should have sufficient procedures while accepting the new clients and while agreeing to continue their existing client relationships. That the engagements which they are accepting, they have the sufficient expertise and competence. And secondly, the most important thing is that whether they have the resources and the client has the integrity of which they are doing the services. When they are accepting the new clients, it is very important that they look at the integrity of the client. They look at their past audit opinions. They look at the clearance from the previous audit firm that any ethical issue didn't existed at that client. They need to think about the competence and expertise, that whether our firm has the sufficient expertise to perform the audit and assurance services of that client, of that industry. Okay. And when we talk about continuing existing audit relationships, like for example, renewal of the audit activity. So obviously that is an existing audit client. So in that case also the firm has to think that whether the circumstances have changed in such a manner that whether the firm has sufficient expertise now or not. For example, a client has grown a lot and the firm don't have sufficient expertise. So in that case, continuing that relationship will be problematic. Okay, so acceptance and continuation of client engagement and firm-wide culture and system of quality management. If you remember, the ISQM1 emphasizes on creating a system of quality management in the firm. A system of quality management which will make sure that all the engagements which it is performing are performed with high level of quality. And in system of quality management, there are 8 components. If you remember those 8 components, the firm-wide risk assessment procedures, that proper risk assessment is done. The governance and the leadership of the firm should be focused on the quality. Client acceptance and continuation procedures should exist in place. Okay, relevant ethical requirements are always considered. There should be emphasis on the ethics. The resources of the firm should be sufficient. Engagement performance control should exist to make sure that every engagement is performed with proper quality. Information and communication should be done properly, and there should be a monitoring process to make sure that this system of quality management is followed. There is a complete article on this issue. Okay, a complete article which include this ISQM1 requirement on acceptance and continuation of client relation, and the requirements about the complete system of quality management, the 8 components of SOQM. See, it is very important that you make sure that you have the knowledge of these technical articles. Now, this was a 6 marks requirement, so you can develop 6 small points to make sure that you answer this requirement in a valid manner. You are not required to do rote learning, but you are expected to have an overview concept of the articles which are provided by the examiner. Okay, now, objective of ISQM1 is to develop firm-wide quality procedures, quality system in order to ensure that all of the engagements performed by a firm, by an audit firm in relation to assurance activities are performed with sufficient level of quality. Okay, focus of ISQM1 is not on performance of specific engagements. Rather, it is focused on firm-wide system of quality management. So first of all, you introduced the objective, the basic concept of ISQM1. See, ISQM2 is engagement specific quality, which introduced the concept of engagement quality review. Okay, EQR, engagement quality review. Now, in relation to acceptance and continuation of client engagements and continuation of client engagements. Now, what does ISQM1 say in this regard? So, ISQM1 says that whenever the firm is accepting new engagements or continuing its existing client engagements, it has to make sure that it review the requirements in relation to integrity of the client. It reviews the requirements of its competence and expertise. Okay. Now, when it's about accepting a new client, you have to look at their integrity, look at their past audit opinion, look at the clearance from the previous audit firm that whether any integrity or ethical issue exists, look at the expertise and competence of the firm. And when you are continuing existing client engagements, like if someone is your existing client, at that time also you have to review that whether in the previous audit engagement was there any issue which raised concern on their ethics, was there any change which affects the competence of the firm to perform that engagement? Okay. So, in relation to acceptance and continuation of client engagements, ISQM1 requires that a firm should have a proper system to review ethical requirements and requirements in relation to firm's expertise or competence while accepting new client engagements or while continuing with their existing clients. Okay, like for example, if it's a renewal of audit, so you need to think that whether we should continue with the existing client or not. We need to have a proper system of ethical requirements. While accepting new clients, firms should consider several factors in order to determine integrity of new client which they are accepting. This will include considerations of previous audit opinions, like what were the previous audit opinions expressed on them, previous audit opinions, reason of previous firm's resignation, whether any ethical concern exists or not, any ongoing legal issues with that new client, okay, and reputation of that client and its directors. So a firm should consider about the integrity of that client. Further, audit firm should also consider its expertise or its competence and availability of resources while accepting new client engagements. This means, or this includes, consideration that whether firm has sufficient expertise of that client's industry and resources to perform that engagement within expected deadline. Okay, so some basic discussion. Like if you have read this acceptance and client continuation thing, you will remember this, that we have to think about the integrity, values of the client. We need to look at the firm's ability. Okay. And similarly, you also need to think these things when continuing existing client relation. Factors in relation to integrity and firm's competence also need to be considered when continuing existing client relations. Okay, different factors may arise which may impact firm's ability to provide further service to an existing client also. For example, if an existing client has developed a lot or has grown a lot and maybe audit firm may not have sufficient resources available to manage that client. Okay, so in relation to acceptance and continuation of client engagement, see, every point you write, you get 1 mark each. So you have to keep it brief. You gave a basic concept of ISQM1, then you wrote 4 small points in relation to acceptance and continuation of client engagement. See, what I recommend to my students is that when you are dealing with these general requirements, don't write big paragraphs, rather break them down. Break them into small pieces. When you break them down in small pieces, it's easier to score marks. Like you are writing 1 mark comment on each of the thing. Okay, you broke it down in relation to acceptance of new client, integrity, competence, and continuation of existing client engagement. So you are getting easy marks. Then firm-wide culture and system of quality management. Now, what is firm-wide culture and system of quality management? See, the focus of ISQM1 was to develop a firm-wide culture of quality and to develop a system of quality management which is tailored to the firm's situation, and that will ensure that all the engagements a firm is performing are in relation to the quality and are in relation to its size and requirement. Like the 8 requirements of SAQM have to be adapted according to the size of the client. Okay. As per ISQM1, firm-wide culture of quality control or quality management need to be developed, and a system of quality management need to be introduced which will be adaptable according to firm's own requirements. Okay, according to firm's own requirement. This system of quality management will ensure that all of the engagements performed by the firm are done with appropriate quality, and responsibility to ensure or to develop this culture lies on senior management of the firm. Okay, now 8 components of SOQM proposed by ISQM1 includes risk assessment procedures within the firm, number 1. Number 2, governance and leadership responsibilities on senior management. Number third, client acceptance and continuation procedures. Okay. Number fourth, consideration of relevant ethical requirements in whatever work a firm is doing. Consideration of relevant ethical requirements. Okay. Risk assessment, governance and leadership, client acceptance and continuation, consideration of relevant ethical requirements. Number fifth, resources to perform engagements. Okay. Engagement performance with sufficient quality, information and communication throughout the firm, and lastly, and monitoring and remediation processes. Like whenever there is any breach, we have the monitoring and the remediation processes. See, obviously for 6 marks, you are not required to explain each of the principle. But what is expected is that you can give a brief introduction, that there should be proper risk assessment procedures, there should be proper governance and leadership responsibility, proper client acceptance and continuation procedures, consideration of relevant ethical requirements is done, resources to perform engagements are available. Okay, engagement performance is done with sufficient quality, like for every engagement there are sufficient systems available, proper information and communication is done, and monitoring and remediation processes exist. So this is the system of quality management which ISQM1 requires. Now, obviously, for each of the principle, there is a proper explanation. But obviously, for 6 marks, you can't explain all of these points. Okay, you can't explain all of those points. So you just introduce the basic concept of ISQM1 and you highlighted the points of system of quality management. Now, if you want, you can explain any one of them. Okay, otherwise your marks are already done, like you wrote 4 points here, you wrote 2 points here, you gave a basic introduction. So for 6 marks, it's sufficient. But if you want, you can explain any one of them so that your answer gets more in a safer zone. Okay, risk assessment procedures should exist within the firm to enable it to identify its high risk clients. See, it's not the risk assessment for a particular audit engagement. For example, if firm has 20 clients, it has to identify that, okay, within 20 clients, which clients are high risk, which have a higher audit risk, which have an exposure of wrong audit opinion. So there automatically the firm will implement greater system. Risk assessment procedures should exist within the firm to enable it to identify its high risk clients. Accordingly, on those or on the basis of this risk assessment, firm will deploy greater resources on these high risk clients in order to minimize its risk of expressing wrong audit opinions throughout the firm. Okay, like on which clients we have a greater risk. This risk assessment activity should be done regularly. Okay, so it's not the business risk assessment of a client. We are assessing the risk of the firm itself. And what is the risk of the firm? That it may give a wrong audit opinion. So the firm has to perform its risk assessment that, okay, on which clients we have a greater exposure, which have a greater risk of wrong opinion. So we'll develop systems there, we'll allocate more resources there. So what ISQM1 is? The factors in relation to acceptance and continuation, firm-wide culture and system of quality management. So this was a general requirement not related to any of the exam. So 6 marks, so you can write every point for 1 mark each. But it was very important that you remember this article in relation to ISQM1. You have studied that, that was the most important thing. And in our lectures, we have already covered this article in detail. Now let's look at the second requirement, which is an 8 marks requirement, and that is in relation to the scenario. Using the information in Exhibit 1, Evaluate the professional and ethical matters which should be considered before Soba and Company accepts the forensic engagement for Udon Company. So now let's go and read the exhibit in relation to Udon Company and list down some points which firms should consider before accepting this engagement. Let's look at it. Soba and Company's specialist forensic department carries out a wide range of forensic engagements and investigations, including commercial disputes, negligence cases, and insurance claims. Udon Company is a fashion designer and manufacturer with fast moving inventory in line with seasonal clothing sales. 2 months ago, one of the Udon Company's largest distribution center suffered a severe flood, destroying the entire inventory. See, we are reading this exhibit one more time. We have already read this question, but now we are reviewing it again so that we can pick up the factors which we need to consider before accepting the engagement. The company has comprehensive insurance, and the insurance company has already agreed a settlement with Udon Company for the damage to building, fixtures, and fittings. However, there is an outstanding claim for business interruption. Unlike building and tangible assets, insurance which only covers physical damage, business interruption exists to cover the income a business would have received had the incident not happened. Udon Company requires a forensic specialist to provide assurance on the financial impact of Udon Company's loss of profits due to the flood as calculated by the finance director. So basically, they need a forensic specialist report to verify the loss calculation which is done by the finance director. Now, what we are asked here is that we have to use the information in Exhibit 1 and evaluate the professional and ethical matters which should be considered before Soba and Company accept the forensic assignment for Udon Company, including any necessary safeguard. So, if we just look at this first paragraph, okay, we need to think about the scope of the engagement, that what will be the scope of the period for which we need to estimate this loss of income. See, Udon Company requires a forensic specialist to provide assurance on the financial impact of Udon Company's loss of profit. So, what will be the scope of the engagement? What period will be covered in it? This is the factor to consider. We need to think about the use of the report. We need to discuss it with Udon Company that whether it will be only used for insurance purpose only or whether there will be any other use of this report also. We need to think about the competence of the firm because this forensic engagement would be different from the normal forensic engagements because this will involve estimation of the income to cover income of the business which would have received had the incident not happened. So it will be something like prospective financial information getting involved, the financial data, that estimation. So whether we have the relevant expertise, we need to think about the industry knowledge because it's fast moving inventory, seasonal clothing sales. So there will be obsolescence risk and things about that also. So the factors we need to think before accepting this engagement. The finance director of Udon Company is keen to appoint a forensic specialist as soon as possible to support Udon Company's claim. He is proposing a 50% bonus to be paid to Soba and Company in addition to the fees if the forensic assurance work on the insurance claim is completed within 2 weeks. We need to think that whether we have sufficient resources to complete this engagement within 2 weeks because the deadline is very strict. Then the contingent bonus he is paying, so that will create an ethical issue. Like 50% bonus on completing the work earlier, it will become an intimidation for us. So the fees shouldn't be contingent, it should be a normal fees representing the work. And then he want the report as soon as possible to support his claim. So basically, finance director has made up his mind in advance that he want a report which support his claim. So he will pressurize our firm to get a report which will support his claim. So that is an ethical issue which we need to consider before accepting this engagement. We need to make it clear that in this engagement, we will remain independent, we will perform our own procedures, and we will give a report which may support the claim of the finance director or may not support. So, how many marks? It's an 8 marks requirement. You will develop brief points like 1 mark each, discuss professional and ethical matters which should be considered before Soba and Company accepts the forensic assignment for Udon Company. Okay, now Soba and Company needs to consider the scope of forensic engagement requested by Udon company. It needs to be discussed that what period will be covered in this forensic assignment, as it includes estimation of lost income due to flood flooding period. It needs to be considered that for how many months this estimation need to be made. Okay, like you need to make this scope very much clear, that for what period this engagement will be, like 3 months estimation, 4 months estimation, 6 months estimation. What will be the period of estimation? Because obviously the insurance company will have certain tenure of coverage. Okay, like it suffered a flooding, so for like how many months this repair thing will carry on, because during that period the flood has destroyed the inventory, the warehouse has got damaged, so for how many months this repair activity will go on, and for what period this loss estimation activity will continue on, because that will involve the use of assumptions and estimate. Okay, so buying company also needs to consider its competence to perform this forensic engagement for Odon company. It will be a different type of forensic engagement, as it will involve estimation of lost income. It will be more like a prospective financial information engagement in which financial data need to be estimated for certain period. Okay, like whether we have the relevant expertise or not, like it's a different type of forensic. Normally the forensic engagement is like that something is stolen, something is damaged, we have to estimate its loss. But it will be more like estimation of income, which is more subjective, which involves greater use of assumptions. Okay, industry expertise also needs to be considered, as Udon company is involved in fashion products, it was written here, and with fast moving inventory which has a high risk of obsolescence, is involved in fashion products which have fast moving inventory, it involves greater risk of inventory obsolescence and changes in selling prices in order to sell the old stocks which have got outdated due to fashion change. Soba and company need to consider its expertise of fashion product industry. See, if you look at the clothing industry, like around you also, the ongoing sales and discounts are always available because they have to clear up their stocks. Selling prices are changing. So obviously that will impact here. The reason being is that you have to estimate the lost income. And when you have to estimate that lost income, so in that case, the things will be changing a lot. The selling prices will be changing. So you need to think that whether we have the sufficient expertise about the industry or not, like whether we have the industry knowledge or not. We need to think about that whether we have that industry skill or not. Then we need to think about the use of this report, that whether this report will be used for insurance claim purpose only, or whether it will be used for other purposes also. Okay, use of forensic report also need to be discussed with Udon company management, as use of the report is one of the consideration for forensic engagement acceptance. It need to be considered that whether this report will be used for insurance claim purpose only, or it will be used for other users also. Like for example, the company will be showing this report to bank or some other parties also, or maybe they will be recording the loss on the basis of this report, so they may be showing it to their auditors also. So what will be the use of this report? Soba and company also need to consider about the resources, also need to consider about the resources available in the firm to complete this engagement on time. Okay, Udon company is expecting forensic report in 2 weeks time, and that will require greater resources to be deployed for this engagement. Okay, so whether we have the sufficient resources available, maybe we are already occupied in some other engagements. Okay, now contingent fees are offered by finance director of Udon company need to be considered. That additional 50% amount will be paid if forensic assurance or forensic report is given within 2 weeks time, will create an intimidation for our firm to complete the engagement earlier. This intimidation may lead to quality being compromised during the engagement. Okay, like a contingent fees based on early completion of the work, that's not a right thing, because then it will force us to complete the work earlier. So if we are not able to complete it, we'll have a self-interest and an intimidation that no, we'll have to complete earlier to get that 50% bonus. So obviously that's not a right thing. Okay, our firm should see, we have to discuss the necessary safeguards also, the necessary actions also, or you can say Soba and company should uh, ask Udon company to set the fees according to the work involved, rather than any contingent fees dependent on early completion of work. Okay, because that's not the right thing. We should set the fees according to the work and the hours involved. We cannot set a fees that, okay, you will give us a bonus if we will complete early. No, it's not like that. We make our estimate of the time. We'll try to complete it within that. But if it's not completing, we cannot keep any self-interest or any intimidation. Lastly, it needs to be considered that finance director of Udon company is entrusted to get a forensic report which supports his calculation. It will create a concern for independence. It will create a concern for independence of Soba company, as finance director may intimidate or may force Soba and company to prepare a report in line with his expectations. Okay, like he will be expecting a report which support his claim only, so things will not go like that. Okay, it needs to be made clear in engagement letter that forensic activity may result in an opinion which do not support the finance director claim. Okay, like it's not necessary that you will get a report in line with your expectation only. It may result in something wrong also. So you have to be independent. So you had to discuss 8 points. In the last point, we have merged two things. We raised the concern and referred it safeguard also because 8 marks were completed: three, four, five, six, seven, and eight. It was a very easy requirement. First, we said that we need to consider about the scope of the engagement, that for how much period we will be required to do the estimation. Then we said that we need to think about the competence because this forensic engagement is a bit different than the normal ones. Then we raised a concern about the industry expertise. We said that we need to think about the use of the report. We need to discuss it with them. We need to think that whether we will be able to complete the engagement within 2 weeks' time or not. Contingent fees will lead to a self-interest and intimidation issue because then that will act as a forcing on us that we have to complete the engagement earlier to get that 50% bonus. The action is that we shouldn't keep this contingent fees. We should ask them that we'll set our fees which will be independent. Okay, like we'll try to complete it in the deadline, but don't create our self-interest on that. And then the finance director expectation that is keen to appoint forensic specialist as soon as possible to support the Udon company's claims. So we need to make it clear that maybe the report will not be in agreement to your calculations. So you should be open to that. Like if you just want a report in your viewpoint only, then it's not like that you will always get a report according to your expectation. It's an independent review. Maybe the things are in agreement, maybe they are not in agreement. So, what are the actions, ethical and professional issues that need to be considered, and the necessary safeguard? So, you developed small points, 1 mark each, which I believe here was an easy one. And now comes the part C, which is in relation to procedures. A simple 6 marks requirement. Procedures are normally the easy ones. Okay. So let's look at that. I want you all to listen to me carefully. Using the information in Exhibit 2, assuming that Soba Company accepts the engagement, recommend the investigation procedures. It should be performed in relation to the matters identified by the financial controller, Seth Williams. So, in relation to these two issues, we have to draft the procedures. How many marks? 6 marks. So, this means 6 procedures. Okay, so let's look at that. Let's think 6 procedures and develop that. Okay, again, an easy one requirement. Okay, so a piece of land was sold for $2.8 million in April 20X5. However, during a recent review of Raman Company's bank statement, I saw two entries relating to this transaction: a receipt of 2.6 million and a further $200,000 received in the same week, which was immediately transferred to an unidentified bank account with the reference consultancy next to it. So, now what procedures you will be performing in relation to the investigation of this issue? Now, it's a 6 mark requirement, so you'll be writing 3 procedures each. So, you can look at the sale agreement to verify that whether the sale price was 2.8 million or whether it was 2.6 million in reality. What was the real selling price? Okay, then you need to review the sale agreement to verify that whether there was any consultancy clause involved in it or not, like what was the consultancy clause. Or you can look at the banking documents, you can look at the bank statement to identify the details of that unidentified bank account to which this transfer was done. You can look at the board approval minutes, that whether any such transfer was authorized or not in relation to this transaction, whether any consultancy charges were to be paid in relation to this transaction or not. So let's look at the procedures. A piece of land was sold for $2.8 million. So what procedure will be? Review sale agreement of sale, review sale agreement of land in order to verify its selling price, that whether it is $2.8 million or $2.6 million. Okay, you can review the sale agreement of the land in order to verify that whether what was the selling price. Further, it also need to be reviewed that whether any consultancy payment was agreed in sale agreement or not, like any commission or something was agreed in the sale agreement or not. So you can review the sale agreement to gain detail about it. What else you can do? Review banking documents in order to gain detail about the bank account to which transfer of $0.2 million was done. Okay, this needs to be done in order to gain detail if it was any related party transaction or any account which can be identified. Okay, like any detail about this transaction, you can discuss with the management that if any such transaction was agreed or not. Or what else you can do? Review approval documents for the sale of piece of land in order to gain detail that whether any consultancy was approved or not along with this sale agreement, like whether any consultancy thing was approved or not, like whether this thing was an approved transaction or not. So, in relation to this sale, this untraced 200,000, which was immediately transferred to some unidentified bank account. So, you need to look at that. You can discuss with the management that what is this bank account, which is the party to which this 200,000 is paid. So, you can gain detail about that. Okay. So, you can review the sale agreement to verify the selling price. You can review the banking documents. You can discuss with the management to gain detail about this transfer of consultancy, the transfer which was done to an unidentified bank account, that what party it is. Okay, so in order to gain the detail about this transaction, obviously this transaction must be approved. One who signed the check, who signed it, he must have some knowledge about this. Okay, in a separate transaction, the use of warehouse owned by Remin company was leased to a storage company. After inspecting the lease agreement, I discovered that the agreed monthly lease term was for $10,000 plus an additional $1,500 per month management fees. The $10,000 monthly lease payment have been traced to Remin Company's bank statement. However, I was unable to trace the management fees of $1,500. When I questioned Bass Bell, the finance director, she said it was paid to the company's other bank account. All documentation relating to this other bank account is held by Basval. So again, you can review the lease agreement to verify any such $1,500 management fees exist in the lease agreement or not. Number one. What else you can do? You can have a discussion or you can send a confirmation to the bank. Like if it's a transfer to the company's other bank account, you can send a confirmation letter to the bank that, okay, provide us the list of the bank accounts which are maintained by Remin Company. Just think about it. The bank will simply provide you a list that, okay, these accounts exist. Additional bank accounts can only be opened with the formal approval of myself and one of the non-executive director. The finance director claims that additional bank account has been established many years ago. However, several other members of the management team have also confirmed that they also have no knowledge of this additional bank account. So, what else you can do? You can ask Mr. Bell, who is the finance director, to provide the documentation in relation to this bank account. Or you can ask the accounts clerk who made this deposit, who is making this payment, getting deposited there, that, okay, what is the detail? What are the deposit slips? Like whether the account title matches Ramin Company or not. Given the nature of the concerns, I would like your firm to perform the forensic investigation. So let's draft three procedures in relation to this uncraced payment of $1,500. Okay, so review the terms of lease agreement in order to gain detail about existence of management fees of $1,500 payable under the lease agreement to Ramin Company, like whether any such thing exists or not. Review the terms of the lease agreement. Review the board minutes of previous periods in order to identify any approval of any such additional account getting opened in the previous periods as claimed by that guy, what's the name? As claimed by Bess Bell, the finance director. Okay. What else you can do? You can review the board minutes. You can review the terms of the lease agreement. Okay. What else you can do? In relation to this $1,500, he's saying that's in the company's other bank account. You can request the bank to provide the list of the Ramin company's bank accounts operating with them so that it can be verified that whether is the Ramin company's bank account or not. You can also question the finance director to provide the relevant documentation in relation to this bank account. You can ask the accounts clerk who was making this deposit that whether you deposited in the account of Ramin company or you deposited in someone else's account. Okay? A request can be sent. A request can be sent to the Ramin company bank to provide detail in relation to Ramin company's bank accounts maintained with them. This will give a confirmation that whether any additional account of Ramin company exists or not. Okay, you can question the accounts clerk who made this deposit. Obviously, the finance director himself will not go for making the deposit. You can ask the finance director to provide the relevant details. So these were 6 easy procedures which you have to draft in relation to this investigation activity. So we have drafted 3 procedures in relation to each of the transactions since it was a 6 marks requirement. First was an uncraced deposit of $200,000 and other was in relation to $1,500 per month management fees. Okay, so we have drafted 6 simple procedures in relation to it. And if you look at the requirement tab, this question is done. So if you look at this answer on overall, it was an easy question. First was in relation to ISQM1, and it was a simple knowledge based, rote learning based question in which you have to evaluate the ISQM1 requirements. Then the factors to consider before accepting engagement, a very simple requirement. And then part C was in relation to the procedures for 2 of the transactions. So if you look at this question number 2 of this mock examination of September 24 attempt, I believe that this was an easy question. See, when you look at these complete papers, it gives you a confidence that whether you will be able to deal with an actual paper or not. It gives you a real insight that how you have to adjust your preparation. That maybe some students don't prepare the technical articles well. So when you look at this mock exam, you got an idea that okay, the examiner can have a requirement of rote learning from technical articles. So this is the reason why I ask my students to practice complete exam papers before going for the examination. Okay, now in the next class, we'll be looking at question number 3 of this mock exam paper, and then this mock discussion will be completed. Then people have to attempt 3 mocks on your own, which I have uploaded on the learning management system for my students, and send me for marking and feedback. Okay, if you have any queries, feel free to contact me on my WhatsApp number. Thank you, everyone.